Yeah, joining us now, Emma Vigeland. She is the illustrious co-host of Majority Report, my colleague at the Majority Report, and also my friend. Emma, welcome to Left Reckoning.
Oh my gosh, thanks so much for having me. I'm so pumped to be on.
Yeah, it was always kind of scheduling this. It's like you don't want to go too early in Left Reckoning, but now we're at episode 78, and people start to wonder like, is there something wrong? So just to preclude any of those worries, like we're gonna have some fun tonight.
Magic number 78. I'm pretty sure that is Andrew Thomas's number, the left tackle on the Giants. So
Oh, there you go.
all my hopes are
Yeah.
pinned on him, just like they're pinned on this episode.
Well, that's why I chose it. I absolutely knew that 78, definitely very numerically significant number. That's when
Exactly.
when you're running for jerseys at the start of like basketball camp, and you pull 78 out of the pile. It's like, oh, I was hoping I had 23.
Well, we got
Right.
a lot to get to tonight, Emma, but I might have to ask you if you don't mind. I mean, a couple of weeks, I'm pretty excited for football to start up again. You feeling good about the Giants this year?
Oh, please. Of course not. But I do fool myself into like watching training camp footage every year and like, oh, Kadarius Toney's pretty cool. Or I mean, the Giants are going to max out at like 6 wins this year, but it's they haven't won a playoff game since they won that Super Bowl, which I was at, which is why I'm the way I am today, because it kind of cemented my obsession. So still chasing that dragon.
Well, as much as I hate to compare things, it's sort of like me and UT, where it's like so many incredible games, and it's been a very long period of darkness, and I
But
still
congrats.
Oh yeah,
On
I'm
Arch.
very excited. Everyone's stoked here. I think I feel very confident about the Longhorns this year. You can hear that first, but
Well, to me, the most exciting thing about the Giants before we move off that is that when I was in high school, they moved to the NY helmets, and that was like a retro throwback. And it's like, oh, this is really welcome. I love this throwback. And now I feel like we're at the point where they can move back to the Giants spelled out in all caps, and that's also a throwback.
Yeah.
And I feel like they could just go back and forth between those
Every
two
couple.
for like 100 years.
They just introduced those as alternate helmets. So they literally this year they read your mind, Matt.
There you go. It's time.
Let's get to some of this stuff, y'all.
Let's do it. So I want to be authoritarian for a little bit. There's a story out of Kansas, and as I looked about 5 minutes ago, only 2% of the vote is in for this ballot measure that would, my understanding is, allow them to attack abortion in Kansas. There's a reading of the Constitution that says, I'm assuming the right to privacy granted the right to Kansans, and now Republicans have a ballot measure that would make that fair game for the legislature. There's a story here by the Washington Post, Democracy Dies in the Darkness. Actually doing some good reporting. I don't want to be too cynical. And misleading Kansas abortion texts linked to Republican-aligned firm. Let me just pull that up here.
Yeah, this is pretty nuts.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to say anything before we get into this article on this?
Basically, I mean, as this stream happens, right, we're awaiting the results of what's going to happen with this ballot measure in Kansas. And the way that it's phrased is pretty convoluted. And I think it seems like Republican groups are taking advantage of that.
Right. And I mean, there's that. And then there's this part, which I think should just be illegal, which is messages were sent using numbers leased by Alliance Forge, a Nevada-based firm crafted by a PAC led by former Congressman Tim Huelskamp, Arkansas. More on him in a little bit. But like, look, and I kind of like, we talked about this a little bit with Ben Burgess on Twitter. Like, I'm not sure what under the civil code this is illegal. But there's this sort of like general feeling that like, you can't lie. I remember Trump joking about this. Like, you can't lie about what date the election falls on. And I'm trying to find it. I haven't been able to find an actual law that's against that. But to me, that should be a fine and 5 years in prison. But just to go through this article.
Why are you against free speech?
I know. I mean, literally, I am against this kind of free speech. Absolutely. The text messages arrived on Monday, the day before Kansans were set to vote on an amendment that would excise abortion protections from their state constitution. The text claimed that approving that measure, which could allow the Republican-controlled legislature to outlaw abortion, would safeguard, quote, choice. If the amendment fails, constitutional protections would remain in place, buttressing current law that allows abortion in the first 22 weeks of pregnancy. This is what the text said. Women in KS are losing their choice on reproductive rights, the text warned. Voting yes on the amendment will give women a choice. Vote yes to protect women's health. But the messages were crafted by a political action committee led by Tim Huelskamp, a former hardline Republican. Oh, I need that bigger. Sorry, David. Going to countermand your order there. A former hardline Republican congressman from Kansas and enabled by a fast-growing Republican-aligned technology firm, according to, and like technology firm, what they're doing is buying Twilio numbers and sending text from them, right? Like this is the same infrastructure we take voicemails on. It's like, it's not like fucking Peter Thiel in a lab. I mean, not that he's a smart guy either. The people and the groups behind the campaign have not been previously reported. The messages were sent from the phone numbers that have been leased by Lines Forge. Anyway, this last bit, the Kansas Government Ethics Commission said Monday that under current law, text message advocacy about constitutional ballot initiatives does not require paid disclaimers. And like that, to me, seems like the problem. This is where we should federalize elections and have that be, I mean, at least that much. I mean, I guess it's one thing. If you're going to pay for a bunch of lies about the election, then say put your name to it. I guess that's a good reform. I would prefer prison, particularly in the view of with who we do in prison. Crystal Mason's contentious illegal voting conviction must be reconsidered, criminal appeals court says. So Crystal Mason, who in 2016 sentenced to 5 years because she was ineligible to, let me get out of our Canva here, was ineligible to vote because she was on parole, I think, or out of prison for some reason. And you get in prison for that. For, I mean, just look at that, tells you everything about what's allowed and what's not allowed in this country, and it drives me crazy. But before I let you guys weigh in, I did find a little intro to Tim Huelskamp, so we're going to take a little 2 minutes with Tim, and I'll let you guys sound off. Oh.
Hello, I'm Dr. Tim Huelskamp, president of the Heartland Institute. Welcome to our new feature on Heartland's YouTube page called 2 Minutes with Tim. From Heartland's new television studio, I'll be visiting with you and fellow lovers of liberty about the news of the day. And to kick off this feature, let me first fill you in on what a great 2017 it was for Heartland and the rise of freedom. First of all, in July, I was honored to take over as president of Heartland.
Now, I love that. That's enough. That's as much as we're going to watch of that. But I love the idea of you're going through, like, you're the head of a foundation. Let's go through what the best things that happened among many to this foundation were. Number one, I became the head of it. That's very funny to me. But that's Tim Huelskamp, the guy who is lying to you by text messages. Sorry, I'm talking a lot, but also drives me insane. These phone things, not useful anymore. Not useful because everybody who calls you is trying to scam you. Everyone who texts you is trying to get you to, like, cough up your PayPal password. It's all scams, and that should also be a functioning country should be able to regulate that, I think. So anyway, that's the amount of my complaints. I'll let you guys go in on it.
I mean, my first thought is that this is supposed to be under the jurisdiction of something like the FTC, but I'd imagine that they're so hamstrung by the insane precedents set by Citizens United and other campaign finance laws that it's just so easy to get around it, and they're a ghost ship at this point. And this should be illegal. It should 100% be illegal. But it goes to show that, like, that example that you laid out, Matt, if you're somebody who makes an earnest mistake about whatever district or county you're in, or if you're able to vote given your status legally, they're going to bring the hammer down on you. But if you are en masse trying to mislead voters and trying to get them to vote against what they actually believe in if they don't read every fine print on a ballot measure. That individually is not a threat to democracy. It's just the one person who may have had a criminal record due to drugs trying to vote to save abortion access, or I mean, that was in the Texas Tribune, so I don't remember the specifics of that case, but like, yeah, lock her up, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just it's a. I mean, I do mean to be, intense when I say it's like this is like an attack on democracy, but like this is one of those things. Like I do very much support like ballot initiatives and like bringing questions to the people, but the way that the right wing has been willing to do this lately is increasingly not just frustrating, like frightening. Like they are willing, to. I mean, this ballot. I'm sorry, this constitutional amendment there is extremely vague. And you have to do two jobs, right? You have to convince people to show up and vote for you, and then help them figure out which side means which. Is a yes vote for this or a no vote for that? And like they're doing the same thing here. Like we had a lot of state, amendments on the ballot in the most recent election. And like, Lord, like I do this for a living. I spent a lot of time thinking about this. I had to have my cheat sheet with me because they're all written in this kind of vague, opaque way. And that's the game that they're trying to play, particularly in Western states where you do have these kind of ballot initiatives to just try to rule in that way. Like, I don't think that we should be against that as a tactic. Like Luke Mayville is doing amazing stuff in Idaho. They're saying, well, the Republicans are never going to do things that are really popular, like expanding Medicaid and saving, thousands and thousands of people. We'll just bring that question to the people, and the people say, yeah, we'd like that. But what the Republicans are trying to do is trying to squeeze in these like really sneaky and confusing amendments. And I don't know how many other things were on the ballot there in Kansas. I don't know if this was the only thing that they were voting on today. But here's like you got like 30 different things, and a lot of them are really psycho and dangerous. And worrying for democracy, and that's like the game that they're playing. I mean, I think that like one of the points that I've been trying to remind folks about the Republican Party is like they're extremely happy with minoritarian government. Like they're extremely happy with sort of like having their core base and then sort of pulling in other people straight up through deceit in this way, into accidentally supporting them or misleading them about what they're intending to actually do. And yeah, like we should be, extremely worried about it. I'll be curious to see how successful this initiative is. I mean, early counts are. I'm
on New York Times now, right, or website right now, checking out the polling, and it's just 6% reporting, but it's 70.
And those are going to be urban too.
Yeah, right, exactly. So
you can't say anything confidently.
Yeah,
but
to your point, really quickly, David, like the entire abortion debate is built on deceiving voters because they hide the ball until the very last minute and then they strike. They're like snakes in the grass. It was the same thing with this Roe v. Wade decision. Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, Coney Barrett. Hey, it's settled law. They'll answer that under oath. And then as soon as they get into power and they understand, all right, we got the 6 votes for this, let's go. This is time. Strike. And even after that, so it happens, it's like they stab you and then they say, hey, you just need a band-aid, right? It's not that bad, you're basically the same. And they're pretending like nothing's really changed, nothing's different, don't worry about it. And it's just a way to quell people's fears so that they can lay the groundwork to go after contraception, gay marriage, whatever. And they do that in a variety of ways, including hiding the ball and changing and making text on ballot initiatives so convoluted that no one can understand what's even in it.
Or one of these fellows, I can't remember what group he was in, but he runs those like just monstrous things they call like crisis centers, and they present them as if they're an abortion clinic to people, saying that like a 10-year-old could be a very great mother, right? And it's like,
well, and we're still talking about so you want people to have abortions at 8.5 months? Like we're still having that fucking conversation as they just completely attack the right. I mean, I don't want to get off.
But I'd be curious.
Yang says that's the other side of the abortion debate.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll have some words for that guy in a second. But I mean, I'm just curious. I know you've definitely talked about this a lot in Majority Report. But like, I mean, how do you feel about the response so far from the National Democratic Party, to this Roe v. Wade decision?
I mean, I think I've been as critical of it as anything, frankly. I mean, they seem to only focus on the electoral elements of what this means for them. And they don't even do that part smartly, but I kind of want to put that aside for a second. If you have spent decades talking about how this is a fundamental right to privacy, by the way, and this is a point I borrowed from Matt because it's so good. Like, they make it a privacy point, which is a way to obscure what the larger problem is that healthcare needs to be a right and free for people in this country, and that includes abortion care. And so they don't want to say that in the same way that Pelosi, despite it being cheaper and more effective during COVID, didn't want to expand Medicare temporarily to people and just wanted to do the more convoluted COBRA subsidies, because even cracking that door open is such a threat to the Democratic leadership as currently constructed, and most of the Democratic establishment as well, even though I hesitate to use that phrase largely, but it's true. Like, they can't even begin to entertain that. And so they talk around the issue messaging wise and make it about an individual privacy right. They won't even say abortion for the most part. I mean, Pelosi's on this vanity trip for her China hawkishness in Taiwan right now. Like, if this is the fundamental issue for Democratic voters, as it should be, based on polling and also just based on what's right, then it should have been all hands on deck. And I don't really care if Biden doesn't think that he has the legality to do abortions on federal lands. Do it, and then let the Supreme Court strike it down. And then, do whatever else you can and let the Supreme Court strike it down. Talk about reining back judicial review. Begin to talk about packing the court. Like, these things sound like fairy tales because of who is in power right now, but that's actually what should be being done, obviously.
And also, like, that's what they did. Like, the Republicans, like, the fact that, like, there's no abortion in Texas right now is because they passed laws that were clearly against, the law of the land, and they just they did it in a clever way that protected them from legal challenges long enough for this to happen, that those effectively went on the books.
And it's wild, like this act, like, oh, you can't really do much with the presidency. No, we all saw Trump, motherfucker. Like, we saw him. He would try. He wouldn't just be sitting there. He would be causing a constitutional crisis. And guess what? Fuck the Constitution. You should be causing constitutional crisis at a time like this, when, like, the Supreme Court is illegitimate. Like, it just is. And also, I just want to credit you credited me with that point. That was actually from Liz Franzak, her first time on TMBS back in the day. But yeah, it is such a great point. And I just want to reiterate the other one, which is like that and the attack on trans people is just capital reacting against people being empowered to seek their own health care. The same with, like, you don't what about 8.5 month abortions? That is just there to smear just people and doctors. That's all there is, and to put a judge between those. That's the entire. There's not an actual problem of people getting 8.5 month abortions. It is just a wedge to put judges in between people in care.